So in my last theory video for Pooch Inc., I talked about red materium and what it is. If you haven't watched it, maybe do that please. But something you absolutely must do is subscribe to Springs. They help me out with this theory along with some other theories, and they're just, really cool, so yeah. Also, this theory has a lot less science behind it, and it's a lot more of speculation, so to make it more interesting and, so that way I'm not stumbling on my words, I'm going to do what I call a mat pad, and I'm going to make it sound like the ultimate timeline, where it's more of a story than a theory. But regardless, this is my theory. Mr. Red. He was the most intelligent and advanced AI in the world. He was seen so highly by the employees of Pooch Park. Mr. Herring always believed he, along with red materium, would help this park become better than it ever could be. And yet, here he was, in the now abandoned Pooch Park, where there were once hundreds of people walking around the park, playing games and making memories. There was now nothing but old computer monitors and unfinished construction sites. They didn't even finish his room. He was left to rot in this park, like everything else. But he wasn't going to accept that. Those who abandoned him would feel his pain. He would get out of the park and make them feel what he felt. He began hatching a plan to escape and enact his vengeance. But he stopped. He was just one animatronic. Even if he was the most intelligent AI in the world, his intelligence couldn't stop multiple people fighting him or something like a tank. If anything went wrong, he would be decommissioned, that much he knew. So, he needed an army. He knew there were other models of himself around the park, the prototypes, but needed to activate them first. Even if the prototypes were functional, they were never finished. They were left unpainted and never got red materium canisters. He started experimenting on some of the mascots to try and take the red materium canisters out of them. The first of these experiments was on a jangly animatronic. Mr. Red used a metal pole to stab through the head and torso of the mascot to try and gain access to the canister, but the only thing he was able to remove was an eyeball out of the mascot's eye socket. His second experiment was on a Flammy mascot, where he tore off the beak and stabbed it into the chest. Again, the experiment left him fruitless. All he did was torture the mascots and mutilate their bodies. Mr. Red thought about what would happen if, instead of trying to rip the mascots apart and put their canisters in the prototypes, what if he instead fused the mascots with the prototypes? He tested his hypothesis on an unsuspecting Pooch mascot, ripping and tearing it apart, fusing its limbs with one of the prototypes. With the two machines fused together, it was now time to see if the experiment was a success. He turned on the Frankenstein of machinery and watched in amazement as it came to life. He was ecstatic. The experiment was a success. He began doing this with other mascots. Loogie, Flammy, more Pooches. Slowly, he made a monstrous army of cogs and canisters. Soon, it was time for his revenge. With an army of red material amalgamations on his side, his plan was foolproof. He was center stage now. He was the ringleader. No longer would he be left behind, forgotten. They would feel his pain, his suffering. They would regret what they did to him. They'll wish they never left them. He's not the one who will rot away. They will. So that's cool, but you might be wondering how I came to this conclusion. Well, like I said, I got my theory from multiple areas. It first started with the games, as in the character hall, the Monster Mascots, along with Bull and Heart, all say something similar, that they were experimented on by Mr. Red, ripped and torn, but the reason why was unknown. This intrigued me, and I began looking into it. When I investigated the lost tapes on the Pooch Inc. YouTube channel, there wasn't much that I could really find, other than, the already known knowledge of Mr. Red being enraged by his abandonment in Pooch Park. Obviously, Mr. Red was fusing the mascots with the prototypes to help enact his revenge, or at least that's what I think. But why? Why not just use the mascots you already control? This is what I tried to figure out as I played, but I never could think of anything. I left the question on the back burner as I researched other theories, but I knew it was a matter of time until I had to answer this one. I started thinking that perhaps the mascots refused with the prototypes to gain the advanced AI programmed into the prototypes. But I wasn't sure if the prototypes had the AI in the first place. I figured I would ask Springs themselves, since they said if I had any questions I could ask. I wanted to try and figure it out on my own, but I was stuck. There was no evidence in the games that said whether the prototypes had the same advanced AI or not. I hoped Springs would at the very least give me an answer, or a hint. Instead of an answer, I got something even better, a guide in the right direction. I asked him if the prototypes had the same AI or not, to which Springs told me that I should instead be asking why the prototypes don't move on their own. Instantly, this answered my question. The prototypes are inactive. In the areas where the prototypes can be found, such as the secret closet in Chapter 3 or in some of the chase sequences, they are inactive. They don't move, they don't attack you, nothing. They lack red materium, and therefore they lack life. Between this and the experiments, I started to piece the whole thing together and understand the experiments and their purpose. I'm not sure if this is right or not, but chances are the reason Pole and Heart exist are because Mr. Red wanted to just put the canisters inside the prototypes. Considering that in the descriptions of both experiments focus a fair bit on the chest, which is where the canisters are stored in the mascots, I believe this is the reason for Pole and Heart existing at all. After these experiments failed, Mr. Red then instead tried fusing them, which led to the prototypes activating. I believe Mr. Red wanted to activate the prototypes because of the drill. Mr. Red has a drill hand, which we see throughout the tapes and secret areas that Mr. Red uses to attack. The prototypes have these as well, unlike the other mascots like Pooch, who just punch you or whatever. So now we know the purpose of the Monster Mascots. Awesome. But still, I don't quite understand everything that we are shown throughout Pooch Inc. What I'm looking into right now is on Ricky, so be on the lookout for that. Anyways, that does it for this video. I want to thank you all for watching, and thank you again to Springs for not only helping me out with this and some other theories, but also for creating Pooch Inc. in the first place. So go subscribe to them on YouTube, follow their Twitter, and go play Pooch Inc. on Roblox.